also want to talk about the role of corporations after the Business Roundtable's change in language that said the purpose of a company is about more than maximizing shareholder value. Here's BRT CEO Josh Bolten on CBS's Face the Nation yesterday.
The purpose of a corporation is to serve all of its stakeholders, its customers, its employees, its communities, and its shareholders. But it means taking care of all of your stakeholders, because in the very long run, you can't take care of your shareholders unless you've taken care of your customers, employees, and communities as well.
These, I don't know, is this new? That's a new concept that CEOs should think about customers, should think about employees, should think about communities. What have they been doing all along? They've been slashing, burning, and just greedy profit mongers, or?
I don't think it's a new concept, but I think articulating it from the BRT when the statement was so sharply focused just on shareholders before was a big change and important. I mean, what you just said, go back to someone like Indra Nooyi, a dozen years ago, sets performance with purpose is the underlying direction for PepsiCo, delivers excellent performance over more than a decade, but does it in a fundamental way that connects to other stakeholders. I think we've seen CEO after CEO over many years, and particularly in recent years, recognize that articulating purpose clearly, framing it against a multi-stakeholder environment creates more shareholder value in the long term.
But what if she had not had good shareholder performance and it had lagged? How would Pepsi be positioned to fulfill its social responsibilities if it wasn't as profitable?
I think somehow this discussion, at least as I've read some things, has lost track. This wasn't an or statement. You can either do this or that. It's an and statement. If I said to you, should you have profits or growth, to any CEO, not to you, to any CEO, they'd say, well, that's a false statement. You need profits and you need growth. And my job as CEO is to lead my organization to deliver both. This is an acknowledgement, not about do you get to focus on shareholders or on other stakeholders. You need to focus on shareholders.
It does imply that there is a problem with just purely profit incentives and shareholder value. And
when it's framed,
that there was a problem. Let me just ask you: do you think that the profit incentive runs counter to communities and counter to employees and counter to these interest groups, these other parties that you're talking about now? Do you think the profit incentive is actually a negative for them?
I think that the profit incentive with single-minded focus and not recognizing the interest of other stakeholders can run counter, and I think it can lead to very much a short-termism attitude.
I mean, you saw the Wall Street Journal's editorial, I guess, right? And Milton Friedman, I mean, it was hard for him to finally convince people how important that was, and it was sort of a basic tenet of the differences between socialism and capitalism, and you've got an entire party and a far left part of that party pointing fingers at these greedy CEOs and profit mongers and banksters. And this just, you're almost saying, you're right. We have been single-mindedly seeking profits, and that's wrong. Let's say that you have a company. Let's say you have a company that has a bloated structure, too many employees, right? And then there's a business turndown. There's a slowdown in the economy, and they need to rationalize some of their operations, i.e. they need some layoffs. They need to shrink their workforce and become more competitive globally. Do they now have to think about layoffs and how it affects the community so that they can't compete globally? They need to keep their workers. They need to make less profits, and then they need to close down certain plants, and 100% of the employees lose their.
So, Joe, I would start by saying the first line or the first paragraph of the statement from the BRT reinforced the importance of free markets as the best way to create value for society in the long term. You've got a group of 180 CEOs around the table. I think we deeply believe that. But there is a recognition that the best way to do that in the long term is to recognize that we serve multiple stakeholders, we get freedom to operate from society, and that the best way to build value in the long term is to understand and focus on the needs of other shareholders. And we've seen it in all the research we've done and others. Companies that perform well on measures around ESG actually outperform in the market for the long term. It gets always framed as a trade-off. Do you do A or B? But it's not just an and, it's reinforcing. Companies that do good strategy around ESG and other things and have a purpose that goes beyond just generating profit, energize their employees more, are more valued by their customers and their communities, deliver more value in the long term. And of course, in difficult times, companies need to recognize they're going to have to change operations.
If a company has a CEO who is unethical, or if they're big polluters, or if they do all these egregious things, the stock goes down, and you don't have the long-term performance. So that it sort of takes care of itself. If you do all and if you hire a decent person as a CEO, I mean, you're not hiring Martin Shkreli.
But do you have to buy some cover from the attacks from the left?
Well, that's the thing. If you're afraid of the barbarians at the gate, and you figure this is a way of getting out in front of it, then you can view it even more cynically.
But
we learned our lesson. We were pretty bad before. Now we've learned our lesson.
I don't think this is being done out of fear. I think it's being done out of the need for clarity. Most CEOs, in fact, the reason it was so easy in the space of weeks to get 180 CEOs to sign this is because the vast majority of CEOs I talked to recognize that purpose is more than just shareholders. It's this multi-stakeholder mindset. But the BRT statement, which was, representing, was misrepresenting.
Can we get it down to, instead of 100 times the lowest employee, can we get it down to 5 times? You think the CEOs will sign on for that, Rich? Would you?
I don't think that's the intent of the statement, to go after that
question. I didn't think that
question is to start. This is about serving multiple stakeholders as a reinforcement to creating value and as a clear understanding of the role the business expects to play and the leadership that we want to show in society to build the economy and to build opportunity for everyone.
That's implied. I don't go into it thinking corporations are evil, and I need to hear from them.
I believe you see it that way, but many people read the BRT statement before and said, okay, these people only think about making money.